All right, so hi everyone. Thanks again for joining us. For those of you who just joined, welcome to our show. Great to have you here. What we'll be discussing today is how to search for your first UX role effectively. We have invited an awesome guest who has done that successfully and really mastered job search and interviewing and got hired by many top companies. So now she has lots of experience in the field and will share many of her insights about this journey. And answer a lot of your questions. We'll introduce our wonderful guest in just a few minutes. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of a company called BeginX. It is a part-time UX career accelerator based on real mission-driven client projects that helps people who know UX basics become highly hireable and transition into the field in one of the most efficient and affordable ways and without quitting their jobs. And I don't mean this to brag or anything like that, but just to give you a bit of a background for credibility purposes, we have run many cohorts and helped around 150 people or so get hired into UX roles. And we'll tell you more about our program and also make a special announcement closer to the end of the event. Of course, that part is completely optional for you. All right, so here are some companies that the grads were hired by. So we've seen lots of people go through this entire UX career transition journey. Excellent, awesome. So now let's get to the most fun part and introduce our awesome guest speaker. Then we'll jump into the interview. So Victoria, it's really great to have you here. Thanks again for joining us. I'm really excited to have this discussion with you. Because I know how quickly you progressed in your UX career and how good you are at landing new roles and getting hired. So I think you're a really good person to talk about this. So would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, hello everyone. First of all, thank you so much for even joining us. I am a UX director. I'm currently a Publicis Sapient. Prior to that, I was at Big Spaceship. I was at an agency called Organic, and I was in-house at UBS, JP Morgan, Macy's, a handful of other companies, which names are escaping me right now. My background is actually in graphic design. So I went to school for graphic design, and whoever also has that experience, if you could put that in the chat, that would be fantastic. I learned about UX actually by attending General Assembly and then enrolling into BeginX, the very first BeginX that Michael was running, the very first cohort. It was in person because it was pre-pandemic. And I've learned a lot at both General Assembly and BeginX. And yeah, I'm happy to reveal all of my secrets. I am based in New York City. I have freelanced, as I've mentioned, at many different companies over the years. So I've interviewed over and over for the last 10 years here in the city, and the last, as well as 2 years even before that. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any of the questions that Michael, you have for me, as well as the audience questions.
Excellent. So let's jump into the discussion. And by the way, just a quick reminder for everyone in the audience, again, great to have you here. If you have a question, please use the Q&A tab. This way, you can also upvote others' questions. And again, we make sure we address the ones that you guys are most interested in, right? And we kind of use that 80-20 rule and address the most popular questions that most of you are really curious about. All right, and just as a reminder, right, we'll make a special announcement about the program we're running closer to the end of the event, and we'll also share the UX career transition roadmap summary handout. So stick around if you would like to get that. Cool. So during the discussion, right, we'll mostly discuss, if you just recall that framework that we just covered, right, we'll focus quite a bit on the search phase. We'll also talk about search asset creation phase, basically portfolio, resume, online presence. And then we can also touch on how to position yourself well to employers, right, so that all that search and interviewing is actually effective. And basically, so we'll talk about that practice and grow phase as well, how to build yourself up so you are more marketable in that first UX job search. So Victoria, so before we jump into the details of job searching, how do you know if you are actually ready for that job search and it actually makes sense to start it?
These are going to be tough questions. I can feel it. Um, I think that, I think first, right off the bat, whoever is here, whoever is hearing me say this, if you're attending right now tonight, that means you're ready for the job search, right? Otherwise, why would you be here? But I think that no matter where you are, if you're currently employed and kind of unhappy, or you're trying to get into UX after college, if you are in a totally different field and you're trying to get into UX or really anything, I think that looking for a job and having it being top of your mind is important no matter where you are. And I'll say this so many times over the course of the evening, depending on the questions, Michael, that you ask me, but networking is a huge aspect of that. And I think networking is the thing that people often neglect and kind of forget about, but networking can, and often does, lead to new job opportunities. So I think job search, you should always be kind of looking to what else is out there, but you should also be networking, which is, again, goes hand in hand with the job search. Long-winded answer, but it's a tough question.
Awesome. So let's take a step back a little bit and kind of start with a bigger picture or end in mind, as we mentioned before, so to speak. So to make your job search effective, right? It's I know I covered some concepts, but it makes sense to basically first find out what employers are really looking for in candidates, and then make yourself an attractive candidate, right? Common sense, not common action. In your opinion, what do you think are the top 3 to 5 most important things that define that highly attractive and marketable candidate in their first UX job search?
Okay, so I think the most important thing for me, well, there are a handful of different things, but the thing that come to mind is this passion for user-centric design. I think having a passion for always learning and understanding that there will always be new things that at whatever stage of the journey you're on, whether it's UX or otherwise, there will always be things to learn. So being open-minded to that is very, very important. Having very strong problem-solving skills. And again, I think that goes hand in hand with the learning opportunities that UX and other industries present. Having interpersonal skills is also very, very important. I know that I've mentioned networking, I'll mention it a million more times tonight, but that is very, very important because it ties into not only networking, but also how you are able to communicate, whether it's to your boss, whether it's to your colleagues or to your clients, stakeholders, no matter who you're going to be talking to, you're going to have to learn how to communicate quite well. And I think those are probably the top ones that I can think of, the top qualities that I look for, especially when hiring junior candidates.
Awesome. So that's cool. I know a lot of people have this question, right? And if you attended our last event, we focused specifically on just how to build experience and how to build case studies. We'll address that just a little bit in this discussion too, right? Because that is absolutely crucial for your first job search to actually be effective. So, Victoria, what I wanted to ask you also is, how do you, like a lot of people ask this question, how do I break into UX without professional design experience?
Oh, how do you break into UX without professional job experience? Well, honestly, it'll be probably very difficult. I mean, whoever's hearing me right now, you've probably read some Medium post or some LinkedIn post of somebody that's like straight out of high school and I'm already like got my first UX role. So there will be instances of people getting a job, but I think those are quite uncommon. I think if you want to get, for the majority of the people, if you want to get a UX role, you need to have client-facing projects. Not projects that you're doing on the weekends on your own because you have no constraints there, right? Like the world is your oyster, but actually having restraints with the client is very, very important. So I know that the reason and how I met Michael is through Beginx, but Beginx is a really great program to put you at whatever stage of the UX learning journey that you are, with actual clients, so that you're creating a client project. So you have those constraints with the client. If you're not able to do that, if you're currently employed, there are ways that you can actually speak to the manager that you have. If there is a UX team or a UX discipline at the company that you're at, you can ask if you can contribute, or you can shadow them, or you can help them out in any way, shape, or form. You can do pro bono work, although not ideal. Again, the most important thing in this instance is, unlike General Assembly, which is where you create a fake project, there's also a fake project with the Google certification program with, what is it, a Udemy, I think, or something else. But again, it's just, it's not professional, right? It's just something you do on the weekend or after work. But yeah, so BeginX, or programs like BeginX, doing pro bono work. And if you're currently employed, either trying to do whatever you can to make like a project out of whatever you can. So again, it's kind of being the problem solver. I've answered this on the prior question. So you have to be able to see that real life client projects are much more valuable than fake imaginary ones. So how can you bring that to reality? How can you get involved in a way?
Yeah, those are great points. And by the way, I know like most classes, right, most courses, that's basically the conventional learning approach, right? So you like that you do not really do real stuff, right? It's only a small percentage of classes, of course, and it's totally fine, right? To start out with, to learn the foundations. So don't feel bad or anything, right? It's like I see someone mention that Udacity also had Leo mentioned that Udacity also had a not a real client project. That's okay, right? It's a great way to start initially, right? It's just we're talking about like further along, right? It makes quite a bit of sense to practice as well. All right. So you kind of started answering this, but maybe you want to add a little bit, Victoria. Why else do you think it is important to have these like real client case studies in your portfolio and not just hypothetical student projects, and maybe highlight what else is the difference?
Okay, yeah. So I also see the chat, and again, I've taken the UX course at General Assembly, which is where I created a really fake project. That was my little baby. The reason clients, real life client projects are so valuable is because it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's you have the constraints, you have the limitations, and the constraints are both time, budget, technology, things that you often don't have if, again, the world is your oyster and you're just doing something on the weekend. It's not a hypothetical project. It's not a hypothetical problem that you're solving. It's a real life client and their audience or their customers or whatever problem that you're solving. So that and that adaptability, that's also that you will gain from working with a real life client and stakeholders. The presentation skills that you will learn by doing that is just completely invaluable. If you're doing a project, and again, I've done this, I was in your guys' shoes. I did a project at General Assembly, but the presentation was for the class. The presentation wasn't for the stakeholders that were providing me feedback and saying, no, we need to pivot or we need to change this or that.
Awesome, awesome. I hear some sirens or something. I hope everything is okay, Victoria. There is. That's the life in New York City, right? All right. So, and I also see a couple of questions, like questions start showing up in the Q&A, right? So again, to make this more interactive, we'll kind of take some questions from Q&A along the way. Just remember again to read others' questions, upvote the ones you're most interested in. So I just want to take this very quick one. Jenny mentioned on the last slide, you said solid product. What does that mean? So just clarify quickly, right? It's basically what we were referring to. I'm not sure if you joined like all the way from the beginning, but essentially we use this product framework, right? When helping people to transition into UX. And what we refer to as product is essentially your skills and experience, and your job search and interviewing is more we refer to as marketing and sales, right? So essentially your solid product, it's mainly your hard skills, your experience, your case studies, right? And softer skills as well. So essentially all your skills and experience, right? So you want to kind of build that up to ensure that you stand out from the crowd, right? So you're kind of more marketable. So hope that answer that, Jenny. All right, so Victoria, I know this is probably, I think, the last question about experience. Anything else you want to suggest? Because I know like lots of people, and that's like the whole reason, one of the key reasons we created our program in the first place is this whole like experience building problem, right? So most employers are looking for candidates with 1 or 2 years of experience, even for like entry-level roles. Can you think of any, I know you mentioned beginners, but then just in general, what are some other good ways for people to build real experience?
All right. Well, I'm going to actually say that Leo, what you've put in the chat is brilliant. So Leo would like to reach out to a local business and work for them pro bono in exchange to writing a case study. That's like, Leo, that's brilliant. That's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about real life clients, right? Again, you're going to be working with constraints. There are going to be budget constraints. There will be time constraints. There will be picky clients. That is absolutely the norm. So I think when companies are looking for junior UX designers and they want 1 to 2 years of experience, you're like, how could that be me? I think that is a brilliant way that you can actually step through the door and say, I have worked with real life client. Here's my case study. A few other ways that you can do it. You can freelance. You can volunteer. You can do things pro bono. You can get paid for it. You can go to your local, I don't know, coffee shop. You can see if their website is maybe built on Squarespace. How can you improve it for them, et cetera, et cetera. I will say that, Ryan, I know that you mentioned that you've seen me before at another BeginX event. I don't know which one it was, but actually the last one that we were also talking about breaking into the UX field, something really incredible happened. So after the event, and Michael, I don't think I've ever told you this, after the event, everybody reached out to me on LinkedIn as it expected. But one of the things that I recommended to them that evening is you guys can connect with each other on LinkedIn, right? I know that somebody's already put in their LinkedIn URL. You guys can create a group and then approach a business. So it's not just one person looking for that pro bono work. It's actually now a group of UX practitioners that are looking for something like that. So to go back to my story, there was a gentleman, I don't remember his name, but he reached out to me and he said, we actually took that advice and now we have formed a group. And the last time I checked, it went really, really well. So that's another idea. Again, you have to be creative. You have to think outside of the box.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great points. Yeah, and Leo, great point. That's what we usually suggest as well, what you could do. And yeah, perfect suggestion about team collaboration, because that is really, really important for employers, right? So if you look at those job descriptions, most of them mention team collaboration in some way. So what we definitely recommend, it's not, let me just be clear, right? It's not easy, right, to find an amazing project, amazing team, ideally with mentors and ideally with a great client who is ready to work with you and ready to make progress and do it fast. That's why we exist, right? So that's why it's much easier to plug into the BeginX system. But that said, you can do absolutely the same thing if you just have all the initiative, if you just may take longer, but you can volunteer. You can, as Victoria said, ideally find a tech product type of company, right? So local business is awesome, right? Ideally, if they say have some kind of like interactive tech application, right? Or like app, right? Or software, right? So not just static website, which is still much better than hypothetical projects, but ideally a technology product, right? Something interactive, so you can actually design those flows and do research, right? And it can be, you can volunteer, you can find a startup, you can reach out to accelerators, you can reach out to incubators. As Victoria said, try to find a team. Feel free to use this chats for anyone who's looking for a team. So you can find other folks in a similar situation if you want to do something like it. Ideally, get a mentor, because here's the risk. If you don't have someone who leads you, right? So the risk is you're just starting out. The startup founder or executive, they might not have UX background. The risk is just kind of not making progress and getting stalling basically, and not getting very far, right? Because there's no one with experience to actually guide you there. And definitely talk about that project with the company in advance. make sure that no NDA prevents you from actually, the worst thing to happen is that you collaborating on that project and doing it for like 3 months, right? And then realizing, oh, we cannot share anything in our portfolios. I mean, that would not be great, right? So try to discuss the scope of work, the phases you're going to cover, make it comprehensive, make it like a nice, strong case. That's how we do things in the program, right? We work with the companies in advance and ensure the case studies are strong and comprehensive, and there is actual UX need, and the project is big enough, and there's like interactive dynamic product, the team and mentor, etc. So like here, like all the insights for you. You could do something similar like this on your own, right? It can just take much longer, right? That's the only kind of drawback, I would say. So Victoria, what I also wanted to ask you is, since we're talking about experience and started talking about case studies, and that kind of brings us to portfolios, right? What do you think are the biggest mistakes and lessons related to UX portfolios, case studies, and experience that you could think of?
Okay, first of all, I'll just totally raise my hand and I'll say that if you guys add me on LinkedIn, and don't even do it now, do it after the event. I am totally willing to look at whatever project you guys are working on and give you guys feedback. How we're gonna do that? I'm not gonna have a lot of time because there's like 40 plus of you here. So if everyone reaches out, there's not gonna be enough time for me to even sleep, but totally raising my hand and totally, I wanna give back to this community. I think the UX community is so incredible. I've been really fortunate with having a lot of mentors, and everyone in the New York State, everyone in the beginnings networking circle. It's just been incredible. So I hope that by me giving back, all of you who are listening right now will also give back when you guys are in my shoes. Okay, so going back to the question that you posed, which is the biggest mistakes. I think the biggest one is not having a process. I'm going to say this again. I think the biggest one, another big one, is not having a real life client process or project. Sorry. So something that is totally fake, somebody redesigning Netflix.com, never going to happen. Somebody redesigning, I don't know, Airbnb app. It's just, those are not real life projects. And I tend to not even look at them. It's just imaginary things. You don't know the constraints. You don't know the tech stack. I think overemphasis on visuals can also play a big part. There's either overemphasis on pretty visuals, so the final design, the final UI, or not enough of it. So I think having the right balance is key. By not having real life client projects, that means you don't have real feedback. You've never really worked with developers. There may be a lack of diversity in the projects that you have. So for example, if you redesigned Airbnb app and then you're redesigning Netflix that like app, it's just not enough, and not enough of a broad spectrum of what it is that you're working on. I think those are probably the biggest ones.
Awesome. Yeah, these are great points. And yeah, it sounds like you might have a backlog of portfolio reviews, Victoria. I see some comments in the chat here. So there might be like a wait period, but I'm sure lots of people will probably reach out. All right, any resume or LinkedIn tips you have for folks in the audience?
Yes. In fact, I'm so glad this is the next question you've asked me. This is like perfect timing. So I know that I've just said, do not add me, do not message me right now. I guess you could multitask, that's fine. But the biggest advice I'll give you all on this call is if you are reaching out to anyone after watching a panel, a fireside chat, attending anything ever, you're reaching somebody out to LinkedIn and you're just adding them as a contact, please don't do that. Please send them a message. If you're going to be messaging me, please say like, oh, I really appreciate how you said XYZ. Or if you're reaching out to Michael and connecting with Michael, I really appreciate the way you've, I don't know, something you've said or the questions you post. Make sure that whoever you're reaching out to has a personalized message. I will caveat that by saying that you do not need the premium LinkedIn profile account, although it helps, and I would highly encourage you all to do that. There is a way to, if you send a connect request to somebody on LinkedIn, there's a small little, like it's very short. It's like, I think 120 characters. You can have a tiny little message to send to them. The thing is, after tonight, I am going to have my inbox on LinkedIn tomorrow morning is going to be absolutely brim full. And believe you me, the people that will send me the personalized message are the people that I will not only instantly connect with, but also if you make it a question, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, then I will also reply to them. So that is the biggest advice I can give you all. Sorry, what was the other? LinkedIn, and was it resume?
Resume, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is a loaded question, Michael. I can talk about resumes forever as well. For resumes, don't overthink them. In fact, whatever you've pulled, whatever pretty resumes you've pulled from Pinterest or Dribble or Google Images, delete them and forget about them. They are oftentimes designed in, I don't know, Photoshop or Sketch or Figma, and they're not a good gauge of what a good resume is. I highly encourage you all to look into what makes a good resume. And I can, spoiler alert, it will not be the way that it looks. It will not be the font that you choose or the colors that you choose. It actually will be the content of the bullet points. You must have all of the contact information there. And I do not care if it's color coded, it has cute little images, whatever, it does not matter at all. It's all about the content. So that's the biggest advice. I will also say that I have like a stack of books here because I was like, okay, maybe I'll bring some of them out. There is a gentleman on YouTube who I recommend to absolutely everyone, like people in beginnings, my mentees, my friends. I look at his videos. I know, a YouTuber, I know. But he is a professional recruitment person. He's not even UX based. I'll put his name in the chat. Highly recommend you all to check his videos out. He is absolutely brilliant. He is very caffeinated, so just get ready for that burst of energy. But I love the way he describes how to put together the right bullet points for the job description, the prior job or the current job that you're in now. Because believe you me, out of all of the resumes I've ever seen, that is the first piece of advice I always give anyone.
What is his name, Victoria? Do you want
to? Yes, his name is Andy Lasavita. Andrew or Andy Lasavita. I'll put it in the chat for everyone. Highly encourage. In fact, I'll say this, that I found him during the summer of the pandemic back in the day. And I watched one of his YouTube videos. I changed my resume. I was like, whoa, my mind is absolutely blown. And I swear I got a job the very next time I applied. I kid you guys not. It's not going to be a magic solution for everyone. So, you know, thank you, Mika, for putting him. He is just incredible.
Awesome.
And I have no affiliation. I have no idea who he is. Like, I just know he lives in Chicago, but just found him and he's a great resource.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. And also just to add to that, in terms of resume, so content is of course most important, but still keep in mind that if you have great content, but your resume kind of, you know, shows very poor design skills, and I don't mean like it's not beautiful, right? It's just, I mean just structure and cleanliness and just kind of more minimalist, or maybe not minimalist, right? So that I've heard that, you know, from many hiring managers, that can be a sign as well. It can be a big turnoff as well. So basically, don't over design it, but ensure it's like clean and nice, right? So it's not just, it doesn't, you know, look bad, right? Because in that case, even if your content is good, they can still just throw it away potentially.
Oh, yeah. Last one. Since we're talking about, again, I can talk about resumes for like 2 hours. Please run it through Grammarly. There is no excuse that you cannot run it through Grammarly. Make sure that you spell check everything in your resume and make sure that you run it through Grammarly. It's a free thing. There's no excuses that there should be any spelling mistakes in your resume. That's huge.
Awesome. All right. And oh, someone I think was asking in the chat, mentioned talking about LinkedIn requests. Yeah, you can just add that, not just message someone, but when you add them as a connection, right? You usually can just add a personalized message. I think that's what Victoria was referring to. And again, that will make you stand out from lots of other folks. Well, unless they attended this event. So in that, all right. So here's what I also wanted to ask you. What, Victoria, in your opinion, what do you think are I know there are like lots of things, but what are the top 3 things in an effective portfolio, in your opinion?
I think it's hmm. I really appreciate, I've said this before, but diversity in different case studies. So one of them could be a website, one of them could be an app, whether the industries vary, whether it's the technologies that vary. I think I appreciate that. And that is something that stands out to me. Having well thought out case studies. Again, no spelling mistakes, no grammar mistakes. I'm going to be certainly looking at pictures because where's my favorite book? Don't make me think. I'm not going to be sitting there and reading everything. I just don't have the time, and no one has the time. Maybe your mom will be sitting there and reading your case study, but frankly, no one else. But again, paying attention to the details, making sure that there is a process that I can follow along with. I can see what the problem is. I can see who the audience and who the customers are that you solved it for, and the steps you took to solve it, if there are any pivots, if it's a real life client project or not. And lastly, it's actually accessibility. So accessibility often gets a lot of conversations about it, but we tend to not actually take any actions on it. So if there is a case study or a portfolio where the candidate that I'm looking through their portfolio, if they make a mention to accessibility, and if they have a dedicated section for accessibility, whether it's for every case study or just one, that will be a huge green flag for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense. So let's take a couple of quick questions from our folks in the audience. So Amara is asking, how can I stand out from the crowds in my job application?
I mean, I think it's all really, really difficult. And I think there's a reason why there's 40 of us here. And anytime anyone logs into LinkedIn, we always hear the stories right on the right-hand side that this company and that company and the other company are doing rounds of layoffs. I think LinkedIn is actually doing rounds of layoffs. I think in order for you to stand out from the pack, my biggest secret is do not send cold applications, do not submit your resume for a job post that you saw. Certainly not on LinkedIn, because we know 10 minutes into that job being posted, there's like 100 applicants. For you to stand out of those 100 applicants, it's a tall order, right? So my biggest secret is to go back on my prior question and my prior answer, is to network. Get in touch with somebody at the companies or in the industries that you really want to work for, and get your leverage that to get a job. I think that is the biggest advice and the biggest way you can stand out from the crowd. How you can do it, I think it's everything that I've mentioned prior to this. It's having a really client-focused case studies, having enough case studies, making sure that you've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, make sure that the grammar is there, make sure that you have no spelling mistakes, make sure that your resume, you have no idea how many I've seen that doesn't have a phone number or an email address or a LinkedIn link or like URL. Making sure that everything is just like as ideal as you can get it to be. I think that's the best way to stand out, because I think this market right now is absolutely piping hot. And I think UX industry is so lucrative to so many different people that you need to stand out.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We actually did, Amara, we did a whole event specifically how to stand out in your first UX job search and how to be more marketable, right? So we will post that video on our website as well. If you can, we had a couple of folks from actually Google and Amazon, and we discussed this topic. So I'm sure you will probably find it valuable. And yeah, definitely follow what we covered earlier, right? In terms of essentially building yourself up and just standing out, right? And basically to stand out, right? To building that effective product, right? So your case studies, strong case studies, longer case studies. That's what I think forgot to mention about case studies. Make sure it's not just like 3 days of work, right? Or 2 weeks, right? Ideally, you want bigger, more comprehensive case studies, right? So that look more like jobs or like shorter jobs, basically, ideally, right? It's not always possible, of course. When we talked about volunteering or pro bono or just working for companies and doing these projects, right? So make sure the projects are relatively long, right? So it's not just like a 1 week here, 1 week there, and okay, now you're looking for someone to hire you. So it's not very likely to happen, right? So you need a little bit more. And also, yeah, I'm sure you'll find that event video useful, Amar. So Saiti is asking, and by the way, I apologize to everyone in advance if I mispronounce anyone's names, right? So I know this is definitely possible with so many different folks from different backgrounds and countries. What significant changes have you noticed in how companies are hiring in UX? Have you noticed any changes, Victoria?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm in the right department to answer that, but I mean, I think it's obvious, right? It's like what I've just said, which is this UX field is so lucrative and it's so mysterious, and it feels like this is the path no matter what background you're coming from. And I totally understand because here I am talking about it. So I think the sheer number of candidates that certainly I get, that my boss gets, that the HR department gets, is just far and beyond what was probably the case however many years ago. So I think that's certainly something that's changed. I think that I mean, again, I'm gonna kind of poo-poo on those like free courses that you or paid courses that you can sign up for, but I think a lot of people unfortunately are putting together case studies and portfolios that are just personal projects and thinking that that's enough to get them over the line without, again, thinking outside the box, thinking creatively. I know that it seems like there's already people reaching out to one another in the chat, so that's fantastic. If you guys can get something together, like that will put you ahead of somebody that's just going to do a Udemy or one of those free like Google UX certificate programs, because they're doing personal projects. You're going to be working on a real life client project. But yeah, I think it's just like the sheer number of people who are entering the industry that's changed the most.
Yeah, and also to add to that, to this question and to previous question, don't apply to just like the hottest brand name companies, right? Don't apply just to Googles and Metas and Netflix, etc. Right? Network, especially try to find more openings with companies that don't have this like amazing tech company, tech product names, right? And there will be much less competition, especially if you're network your way in, right? You do informational interviews, you build relationships, right? If you cold apply, it's still not the best approach, right? Ideally, you want to, again, I'm going to mention this 2-hour job search book, a very useful book that I talk about all the time. Not affiliated. No, perfect. Amazing. By Steve Dalton. We actually want to get Steve Dalton on one of the events sometime, hopefully. Yeah, so maybe at some point we will be affiliated, hopefully. We'll see. But yeah, so read that book. It's about networking using informational interviews, and it's basically search. It's not gonna, so it's 2-hour job search, and I know the title is kind of like catchy, right? So what's gonna take 2 hours is your initial job search system setup. But you'll have a system, you have a process, right? Which is very important. It's very like short book, to the point, gives you all the how-tos, not just like super like high-level fluff. That's without the tactics, right? So it's actually like a nice how-to book. We use it in the program quite a bit in terms of focusing you guys, because networking is, as Victoria said, as it's like a cliche by now, is the most effective way usually. to land jobs, right? And networking is a whole big subject in itself. Most people do it wrong, right? They just do these like superficial card exchanges or LinkedIn connections and only reach out when they just need something, right? And like that's kind of, you want to build relationships, right? You want to build mutually beneficial relationships. You want to help others, they will help you, right? You want to offer help, volunteer, etc. And then if you click, it may result in something, right? So don't just do this like, oh, we're connected on LinkedIn, can you get me a job? Well, it's not probably likely going to happen, right? So it's you need to like connect with someone actually and click and maybe help them with something. All right. So Victoria, here's what I also wanted to ask you. Focus company types, right? When you're searching for work initially, do you feel it might be better to focus on certain types of companies, like either tech companies or startups or services companies and agencies, or maybe tech departments within bigger corporations? Any thoughts on that?
Sorry, I'm gonna deviate a little bit from the question, and I'm gonna go back to because I'm trying to catch up with all of everything that's going on in the chat. So I'm not recommending learning UX through like the certificate programs through General Assembly. That's not at all what I'm recommending. I'm not recommending applying for actual professional roles with just your personal projects. So you got to learn the skills one way. You got to learn Figma somehow. And I hope you're not opening the Figma for the very first time for and trying to make sense of it all while working pro bono on a project. But to go back on your question, I will actually, okay, I know that you've said this about the big companies. I totally agree with you. I know that we all want to work at Google and Apple and all those big companies and the shiny new ones. This is great and all, but think about, what are you passionate about? Like, what industry, what company like really excites you? I think that's the most important thing that you can do. Set your intentions on what company really kind of like excites you. If it's Airbnb, that's cool. It's Airbnb. But why is it Airbnb? Is it because they're kind of like changing the industry of how we stay in different cities? Or is it because their website is really shiny and pretty and easy? Like, think about what is that is, I don't know, attracting you to a certain company or to a certain industry. And I think kind of go back on that. So it's almost like the ant is this company or this industry, but like ask yourself why. It's almost a bit of a UX process on yourself. And to go again, to continue on and evolve on this answer, there will be so many different companies once you start to actually peel away the layers that you will be very, very surprised. There's a handful of smaller companies that you have UX departments, companies that I've never even heard of, companies that maybe somebody in this chat window has heard of. Maybe there are some of the companies that you're currently working at. I think it's all about kind of opening your aperture to different industries, to different companies beyond those top ones that we all know and love and maybe try to strive to work for. And additionally, I'll say this because I have so much agency experience. Consider working at an agency. You get to work at those big giant companies. You also get to work on smaller companies and mid-sized companies. There's a handful of agencies, and I think that that's a really great learning opportunity for you as well. So don't discount really anything, but also be mindful of what is it that you want, not only company-wise, but what is it that you want out of your next professional step? Do you want a lot of mentorship? Do you want to be a part of a huge team? That's also going to guide the kind of companies that you're going to be looking into. And then hopefully you'll be networking with those people.
Yeah, great points. And also keep in mind, right, that I feel like lots of people get really fixated on like these top, best known tech companies. Right now, especially, right, with all the layoffs, probably definitely not the best time, to focus your efforts just on those companies as your first job, right? What we usually recommend is for your first job, try to just get any UX role. It doesn't matter. Just get some role that is good enough, right? Get your foot in the door. After that, it gets much easier, right? Then after that, you can try to pursue your ideal role. You don't have to stop, right? And yeah, just basically look at these different areas. Look at many different companies, right? Like we have alums working at like J&J or Adobe or some other companies, right? There are or like JP Morgan, right? Or companies that are not necessarily tech companies, but they have tech departments, right? And can be excellent opportunities, right? And also see, I think Tommy mentioned in the chat about learning Figma and mentioned Daniel Scott. Yeah, I think I've seen his courses. Yeah, really good courses. And I think he also, so he has videos on YouTube, and he also has courses on Skillshare and Udemy, I believe, that are kind of more comprehensive. We actually have even been in touch with him, and at some point hoping to bring him on the show as well. And maybe we'll give you some promo codes or something for some of his courses on whatever platforms. Or yeah, so he's definitely a great instructor. All right, so Victoria, here's the next question for you. Search methodologies. I know we already touched on this and emphasized networking a lot. Anything else you want to add, maybe in terms of which ones are your favorite and why? We already kind of know, but maybe you have any additional favorite ones. Is it applying on company sites or job boards, or reaching out to recruiters, or networking and informational interviews, or friends, or social networks, or whatever else? What are your tips?
Again, I'm going to say networking. I think even if you're reaching out or even if you're communicating with recruiters, I think that even the way you talk about yourself, the way you're trying to sell yourself, because everything at the end of the day is just, you're just selling something. I think networking, whether it's, as I mentioned before, in those companies or in those industries that you want to work for, that's going to be networking. If you're trying to network or trying to get into and work with a certain recruitment company or a certain recruiter, again, that's going to be networking. I think that is the absolute best way to find your next role. It's not applying to LinkedIn job posts, because those are just 1,000. It seems like every hour there's like 1,000 different applicants for those. And it's also not applying wholly to even the companies that I've just mentioned. So if there's a company that you're really thinking of, or in the industry that you're really thinking of, and they have an opening, and you're just like submitted on their website, whatever company, abc.com/jobs, it's not the same. You need to reach out to somebody about networking. So tell me about the UX team. Tell me about the UX discipline. Tell me about what is your process like? How often do you speak to your customers? That will provide you information about how is the company structured, how is the team structured. It's also going to provide you information about what are they not telling you about the job description, because oftentimes those are posted by the HR department, who are a little bit separate, right, from the work and from the teams. And again, it's just networking. I have so many books. I'm just surrounded by them. And I will say that one of the biggest ones and one of the most important ones is this classic book. I think you guys can probably guess which one it's going to be. It's this book. And I think this is absolutely essential for job search. It's this classic book. Again, I think it's all about not even networking, but just communicating. And I think the way you sell yourself and the way you try to find out more information and hopefully then get a job out of it. I think this is a skill that is unfortunately not taught in any colleges or high schools or anything, but it's so important, because once you're actually through the door, you also may need to network. You may also need to reach out to somebody else from another department and work closely with them. So this is a skill that you will just continue to expand time and time again.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Victoria. And by the way, I think we have a quick follow-up question from Rebecca here. Hi, Rebecca. How do you network in a rural area?
Online. We're here, Rebecca. You can totally network with all of us here. If you've got internet access, you can totally network with other people.
Yeah, that's one of the positive impacts of the pandemic, right? Became the remote culture just became much more standard, much more normal, much more accepted, right? So you have email, you have LinkedIn, you have Zoom, boom, right? Reach out to people, read the 2-Hour Job Search book, ask them questions, reach out to like 20 people a month or maybe per week. Some of them will get, not every, of course, not everyone is going to get back, right? Most of them won't. So just keep that conversion rate in mind, basically, right? And yeah, you reach out to 50 people, let's say 10, maybe 5 get back to you, and maybe you have virtual coffee with them, right? And just use the methodologies, build the relationships. Eventually, something will click. Beautiful methodology, right? Really works. And we've had like those folks, like those of our alumni who really took this methodology to heart about like networking, informational interviews, like Victoria, like Robbie also, you might remember him from some of our other events. And we had other folks really successful, right? Who are like really studying the science behind job search, studying the science behind networking, and just read books or take courses or just learn from others, from tips. Another great book on networking is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. Really good, especially the first few chapters, just kind of changed my mind about networking and kind of how I look at it. Not kind of from this like superficial, sleazy thing to more of relationship building and helping people and getting some help in return as well. Another great book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, I believe, about science of persuasion, right? And that can be really helpful during interviews, right? So soft skills, crucial, right? Not just on the UX job, but also for marketing yourself and in the job search itself. And it's not just someone being natural at them or not natural at them, right? You can pick that up, right? If you're not natural and all that stuff, you can learn, you can read books, you can take courses, you can understand, the principles, apply, practice, and get much better, right? And it's going to work out. All right, so I want to take another question from Jenny that got some upvote. And by the way, quick reminder to everyone, review the questions in Q&A. If you have a question, please put it in Q&A, not in the chat, and upvote. So this way we take the ones you are most interested in. So Jenny is also asking, I have worked at 2 startups, both were unpaid internships for 3 months. Would that be enough experience for an entry-level position, or should I add more client work in my portfolio? Right, so I'll just chime in quickly, and then I want to Victoria maybe to provide a more in-depth answer. I'd say my short answer is yes, as long as those actually gave you great case studies, right? And as long as maybe you have one other case study that is hypothetical, right? So if that is the case, then that's true. If not, then it can be tricky, right? Because that experience is useful to look great in your LinkedIn resume, but unless you also have awesome case studies and strong case studies, comprehensive case studies with a few phases on your portfolio, right? It's not going to be as strong, right? So that's kind of my first take on that. Victoria, what do you think?
Can you read the question one more time? I've tried to find it. I don't see it.
Yeah. It's and by the way, I think by default the questions are not sorted by most upvotes, so you can click on that little button, and it's this way they.
I see it. Okay.
Yeah, I learned it the hard way a few events ago. So she said, I have worked at 2 startups, both were unpaid internships for 3 months. Would that be enough experience for an entry-level position, or should I add more client work in my portfolio?
Well, I mean, I'm going to start this answer by saying a favorite phrase at Beginnix, which is, it depends. It really depends. I have no idea what your case studies are like. I don't know what kind of work, Jenny, you have and you've put together. So I think it depends on the amount of the process and not the before and after, but what was the problem? Who was the audience? What was the process? Did you pivot? Did you have to make any amendments? Like, who were the stakeholders? And then what is the final thing? If you have 2 different case studies from the 2 startups that you worked at that nails all of that, I say that's perfect. I think that's the right amount. If you want to, again, send me a message on LinkedIn, I can totally check it out. I will also say that I know we talked about pro bono a lot, and I'm not supposed to, but I was looking into the chat, and there's a lot of questions about what it means. It comes from the lawyer world. So in law, companies take on pro bono work, so kind of like free work, usually for a good cause, like a nonprofit, for example. I'm not encouraging you at all to work for free. I think pro bono work should be like the last resort. You should get paid if you can for whatever work you've done. However, if there is an only a short amount of time, if you're really passionate, if you really want to, put something together, put together a case study, pro bono may be the path. But I also like not encouraging anyone on this call or anyone ever to work for free. So that's just a caveat that I'm going to throw out there. So Jenny, it's unfortunate that you hadn't paid internships. I don't think that's even the case. Certainly not the case in New York State. I think they paid like $14 an hour or something to that effect, but I don't know where you are.
Yeah, it's always a balance. If you like really believe in their cause, right? If you really believe in like maybe it's like mission-driven startup, that's who we work with primarily, mission-driven companies and like impact companies. But even if it's a regular startup, right? So my take on that personally is, if you just have to ensure that it benefits you, right? So it's not just like you work for free and you just do whatever they tell you, right? So you have to ensure that you're gaining a ton. Like they're getting value, of course, right? Because otherwise they will not be working with you, right? What's the point for them? But you need to ensure that you're getting value, right? You have comprehensive case study. Maybe you get some mentorship even from them. Maybe you work, basically you're getting some value, right? You're getting benefits, right? You're ensuring there's no NDA, or maybe there is NDA, but that doesn't prevent you from like showcasing the work, right? And actually making yourself more marketable. Because I feel like doing that for 6 months is much better than applying for 2 years with hypothetical projects only, and ultimately you'll still waste more time, right? That's just my philosophy on that, right? Is because I think it's more cruel to people to just tell them that, yeah, hypothetical work is enough, right? And like you'll be fine. Some people will be. Some people are master networkers by naturally, right? And some people will waste a ton of time, 1 year or 2 years. And that's what we do, right? Is just to make you more marketable so you can actually land that job, right? And being more transparent and candid, right? Without saying, yeah, it's totally fine. Maybe for some people, but for most, it's not, right? It's actually like you will waste a lot of time if you only have hypothetical projects, right? It's the case for very many people, and it can be very hard. So that's just up to you, right? If you want to just search for a very long time with hypothetical projects, or if you want to invest some time into doing real ones and then be more marketable and stand out from the crowd, right? So that's just some thoughts on that. Just ensure, again, it benefits you in addition to the company, right? So it's not just like you're making copies and then doing whatever you're told. Victoria, I also wanted to ask you, in your case specifically, right? Tell us, how did you get your last few roles? Which methodology did you use? Was it all through networking, or did you get any through any other channels at all? Or maybe you lost 10 roles, because I know you mastered this and you got hired like many times. And so tell us more.
So the current role is actually through Darren. Surprise to no one. Networking. So it's, guys, the thing about me is that like I tell it like it is, and I'll never recommend anything that I like don't fully, truly 100% believe in, which is why I love Andy, and I always recommend Andy Lasavita. And I also recommend networking because it truly, truly works. My other prior to that was, I think it was through a recruiter. Yeah, it was through a recruiter. The last two were through a recruiter. Some of them were, again, a freelance, so that's very common in the UX field. So most of them were either through recruiters or direct hires. And then the other ones were through networking. So it really depends. But it also, think about, I've been in the industry for like 12 years. So it depends. It really depends on where the industry is, what I'm looking for. Obviously, I have way more experience now than I've ever had, right? Hopefully you guys do as well. You have more experience today than you did yesterday. But yeah, networking, there's a reason I keep saying it, because it actually works.
Yeah, great points, Victoria. Thank you. And I also want to take a question from Ryan, and this comes, I know lots of people actually have. I'm trying to like move away from experience and case studies to like actual methodology and stuff, but yeah, I still see a lot of questions asking about experience and case studies. So Ryan is asking, there is a local business with an outdated website. I have reached out offering pro bono UX work, but they haven't responded. If I still redesign their website for my portfolio, would it still count as conceptual work? Should I send them the case study? So Ryan, let me just chime in quickly. And again, I want Victoria to provide a more in-depth answer after that. I would say yes, definitely try to reach out to them. And personally, I think if you do that again, it would, unless they actually work with you and collaborate with you, it is kind of conceptual, right? So because you don't really work with them in a way. So it's almost in a way similar to just, redesign Airbnb, for example, right? Of course, it's, or some other website. So what I would suggest is definitely try to first get them on board, and don't expect every business or every startup or every nonprofit to respond and get back, because here's the thing, and I also learned this the hard way, right? You may be thinking, oh, I'm going to offer them to do wireframing and research, and a lot of business or like startup founders or just business owners, they don't even understand what it is, right? They don't even understand like the details and nuances of like why they should do it. So that's a whole new skill to just learn to sell UX work. Even if you do it pro bono, right? You still have to explain them like what's the benefit and why, right? So, and you just have to, that's a separate, that's why it's hard to like find great projects. It's not hard, but like can be hard sometimes, because you have to actually persuade them to work with you. And ideally, again, a product company, a technology product, an application, a startup, right? That has more interactions, more because that way your portfolio will look better, right? So if you do it again next time, I would definitely first ensure they actually get back to you, and basically ensure that they want to collaborate. If they don't, just keep reaching out. Just write a boilerplate email and template and just send it to hundreds of companies on LinkedIn or something like that. I'm sure, guaranteed, that at least one of them will respond back and will probably want to work with you, right? So it's just keep doing that. And sorry, Victoria, I wanted to chime in, but I think my chime was quite long.
I love this question. And I know that Ryan, you've been chatting back and forth with everyone regarding this because you posted it originally in the chat. And I think you should absolutely reach out to them and see what they think. Hopefully, the best case scenario is that they'll hire you, right? The second best case scenario is that they will be like, oh, thank you so much, Ryan, for doing this. Like, actually, what you don't realize is that our tech stack is totally changed, or we have this website on WordPress, we need to update it. Whatever piece of information you can gather, and if you get a working relationship with that company, that is perfect. Even if it is pro bono work, again, not ideal. Hopefully they will pay you. Hopefully their business is not going out of business. I will also say that this is where kind of like the facade of UX design comes into play. So it's, Michael, what you've said is absolutely brilliant, and it's absolutely true. So even though I've been in the industry for so long and I've had so many different experiences with a range of different clients over the years, you have no idea how many of those don't actually understand what UX is. There has been so many different clients, so many different companies, huge companies, where the stakeholders, when we're presenting something to them or when we're trying to get their approval on something, they don't even want to see wireframes. They don't understand how wireframes are valuable. They just want to see the final design. We have to reel them back and explain things to them. So this experience right here that you and hopefully other people who are tuned in right now, this is exactly what UX is. So you have obstacles, you have to think creatively how you can overcome it. You need to explain the value of UX. Sometimes, and again, you guys know me by now, I tell it like it is. I've been at companies where even internally, you have to prove the importance and the value of UX. So even though there is a UX department at a company, and I'm not going to name any names, but you guys can check them out on my LinkedIn, there's some of them that are publicly available. Even though the company has a UX department, that UX department still needs to prove their importance and why wireframes, why customer research, why speaking to the audience, why creating different revisions, A/B testing things is important to the business goal and the business objective. So Very, very common. And again, how will you solve for this? I can't wait to see.
Yeah, I think those are like great points. And yeah, just to add to that, yeah, Ryan, because you already did it, right? So of course, right now, maybe for the next project, you will want to do it differently. But for this one, yeah, I would definitely just learn how to sell UX work, right? And again, as Victoria said, this will be amazing practice for you for your future as well, for your future projects, right? And explain the benefits. And you also mentioned it's a local business, right? So how did you reach out to them? Did you just email? Did you call? Do you know if they actually saw your email? Did you like walk into that business maybe, right? If you do it enough times and then you have a like clear pitch for them, like here's why you want to do it. Like you're losing customers, or like 100 people visit your site, and then because of this issue, you might be losing business, right? So just learn how to pitch it, explain it to them clearly, and just reach out over phone, reach out, and basically this way you can make it real, right? So because once they get in touch with you, and then you can explain them what you did, you're just clearly explaining them, I'm doing this, I'm not trying to like sell you anything, I'm just basically doing this because I want to, I'd love to just get a portfolio case study from it. And I'm sure, they're nice people, most likely, right? So they'll be happy to help you, maybe collaborate with you a little bit. And this way, you can definitely make it much more real, right? So just kind of say that as well.
I will say, so I know that we've talked a lot about this, like networking, pro bono work, Ryan's question. And the most important thing, and the thing that I feel like, at least at like General Assembly in my course there did not teach me, and it just kind of came to me like over the years of struggling with it, again, internally or with clients, not understanding what UX is. Ryan and whoever else is going to be doing the personal pro bono projects, you need to ensure that whatever you're doing has a benefit for the company. You're not ever redesigning or improving something just so that it can look prettier. This is not art, this is design, right? UX, experience design. You need to ensure that when you come to the business managers, the business owners, somebody said it, like put on the suit, go through the door with your laptop, with the entire case study ready to go, but make sure that you highlight why you redesigning their website from the outdated website is beneficial for them. No company in this world will ever redesign a website just because they have thousands of dollars or millions of dollars laying around. The reason any company, Airbnb, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, like anyone ever improves something is because they want to make a profit. Why does the iPhone come out every year? It's not because it's that much better, let's be honest. It's because they want to make more money, right? More profit. So if you spin the story, I'm not just redesigning it so that it looks cooler and more outdated, like shinier and cooler. No, you are improving their website so that they can have more customers, right? They can incorporate, if it's a restaurant, like maybe a reservation service. Like you are improving the customer and the audience experience so that it benefits the company. That is the most important thing. If you don't remember anything from tonight, remember that, and remember that when you send a LinkedIn invite to connect, that you should message them something that you've heard them say.
Yeah, and also just to summarize it a little bit, right? Usually, right, that benefit, right, for the business, right, if it's a regular business, if it's a not a nonprofit but regular business, it's either, like Victoria said, making more revenue or increasing profit by reducing costs, right? So it's either helping them bring more revenue or reducing their costs, right? Or if it's like entertainment type of company, making something more fun or engaging, or retaining more customers, which results into one of those two usually. If it's a nonprofit, then typically it's getting more donations or basically having bigger impact in some way, right? So it's similar, but just think like of those key levers in terms of how to persuade them. So I want to just quickly answer June's question, and then Victoria, ask you my next question. Then we'll have to wrap up quite soon because we're getting to the getting out of time a little bit. So June Kwan is asking. So June, we kind of addressed this a little bit, but just want to highlight, right? So You're asking, I usually do personalized messages when I make a new UX connection, but after I connect with them, how do you network on LinkedIn, I believe, right? I think it's a little awkward to reach out to them if they work in a company that I apply or interested. Any tips to be less awkward while networking? Read that 2-hour job search book. It has 170-page answer to your question. And once you master it, you'll be perfectly fine reaching out to everyone, right? And just to give you some hints, right? It's essentially, it's not about asking to get hired, right? It's more about learning about what they do and building. And this way, you learn, you ask, you build relationships with them, and maybe it clicks and maybe it goes somewhere, right? And that way, it's much easier, gets much easier to reach out because you're not trying to like sell them your services and like try to get hired. You just reach out like as almost like as a researcher who wants to learn more about their role, them, their company, right? And you just, and they're much more open to respond, right? Because if you just ask them to get you hired, they have no idea who you are, right? And how would they like hire you right away, right? It's like kind of, you know, like meeting someone on the street and asking them to marry you, right? Like nobody usually does that. You know, maybe some people do, but most people don't. It's the same thing. It was just you know, asking for interviews or for jobs. It's almost the same thing. So that's why you want to first build out the relationship, make sure you click, and then maybe it leads to something. So Victoria, next question for you. What were the biggest challenges for you on the way to your first UX job, and how did you overcome those?
Oh. Hmm. Well, I don't know. I feel like my case is a little bit special, right? Because right in the beginning, I mentioned that my background was in graphic design. The thing that I did not mention is that even though I have a degree in graphic design, I've always been really interested in digital design. And digital design and UX is basically like the same coin, just two different sides of it. So I don't know if I truly struggled to get the first UX role. I will say that I was quite pigeonholed when I was looking for a UX role because I was working at MAC Cosmetics for a really long time. And I just kept getting all sorts of fashion and cosmetics companies, like designer roles. And I was just, I'm not interested in this. I wanted to step away from that. And the way I did that was, again, by no surprise, was via networking. So the first role that I did, the first proper UX role that I found was via networking. So I don't know if I had too many obstacles in my way. Certainly, if you are coming from a different profession and a different industry entirely, you may stumble through additional things. If you have specific questions, again, reach out to me, but remember to add a little note when you send me a message on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
That's a non-answer. I apologize.
Well, I think even though you do have graphic design background, I think you did GA to learn the basics. Then you did the first ever BeginX pilot, all right, and got a key. And I remember I was like really excited when you actually landed the role pretty quickly, right after that.
Yes. And I did hackathons as well. So I've done hackathons in person, again, back in the day. And that, again, that kind of like sharpened my skill. I know that I've said networking a billion times tonight. I told you I would. But another thing is that continue to sharpen your skill. I think there is, the reason Michael and I are mentioning I'm just surrounded by all these books that I have is because I'm always learning. I'm learning about UX. I'm learning about research. I'm learning about strategy. I think if you have the drive in you to learn more and to go above and beyond what the other job candidates who are not listening to us right now are doing, that's going to put you that's just going to put you above and beyond everyone else. And I will also say that the most controversial thing I said last time, Michael, forgive me, I'm going to repeat myself. And Ryan, forgive me if you've heard this the last time you heard me speak, which is take your phone and delete the social media. Delete the TikTok, delete the Instagram, delete the Facebook, cancel your Netflix account. If you are serious about looking for a job, and I've already mentioned that the market is piping hot. I know there's a question about what is the job outlook for the UX given the tech layoffs? It's piping hot, right? If you concentrate, if you actually check out those books, if you watch the YouTube videos, if you listen to the podcast, instead of just scrolling aimlessly and just like liking random people's photos, I promise you, you will make progress faster than the progress you have been making. Promise you. Or
Yeah,
your money.
what is that?
No
I
money.
saw that I saw that TED talk. Was it Cal Newport, I think, that who talks about basically the power of focus. I think he wrote a book called Deep Work, I think. I don't remember if I'm
Yes.
correct about the author, but essentially about focus, right? About how social media like makes people so much more distracted and so much more less focused. But to achieve any big things in life, you really need to focus and put in a ton of effort. So it's really, let's say, important to just keep that in mind, and you know, so you could kind of stay away from the dangers of social media. Use the
Yeah.
benefits, but just be careful.
Well, I look, I think that obviously it's not apples to apples here, but if you think about the Olympic athletes or the athletes that are training for a marathon, they're not going to be sitting on their couch eating Cheetos and like watching Netflix for hours and hours. They're going to be out there training day after day, waking up early, right? Sometimes they have a full-time job, so they do it in the morning. Sometimes they do it in the evening. Probably should not be overtraining it that much, but I think it's essential to put your mind into that mindset as well. And oh, my biggest recommendation. So I finally found my match, Michael. I found the author who also gives it a little bit of a like tough love. His name is Brian Tracy.
Hmm.
You can see like I actually have like a handful of his books because he's just amazing. I highly recommend picking up. He has, this is a pretty thick book, but he has one that says Eat the Frog, I think it's called. I'm not
Okay.
gonna remember because the spotlight is on me right now, but it's
It
like the
is, yeah.
shortest book ever, and it is just you cannot read that and then like still stay on the couch. Like you are gonna be jumping up and like ready to tackle it on. So make sure that you check out, and I can put him, Brian Tracy. I wouldn't meet him. He is just like my other half. I adore everything that he says. Oh, and lastly, again, I know, is this Atomic Habits. Again, another book and another author that I highly encourage everyone. So instead of scrolling through Instagram, pick up a book. You don't even have to buy it physical. You can go to the library. Maybe not whoever lives in the middle of nowhere. You can download like the ebook or whatever, but just read a book and get inspired that way. Feel the passion. Feel the passion.
I see someone really loves productivity. Yeah, I love those books as well. So here's what I also wanted to ask, and then I'm going to take a few more questions from the chat. And I know this there's an AI question. We actually did an event specifically on that, and you guys will see that on the website when it's ready. Victoria, anything else you want to share in terms of your biggest mistakes and lessons during search and both interviewing process?
Mm. Oh my gosh. Again, I could probably talk about 2 hours for all the mistakes. I think everything
Still
is in life.
one mistake, two
Yeah.
mistakes maybe.
But I think maybe the biggest one is don't be afraid to ask the hiring manager when you actually have the interview, or if you have informational interview with somebody, don't be afraid to ask them like, what are the pain points? That's not the question to ask, but like, how can you find out what are the pain points for the team? Finding out what is their process, what are they struggling with? Are they at an internal UX department that is really struggling for even the senior management to understand what it is that they do? Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, but to change every negative into a positive, then you can change it into, okay, well, based on our conversation, I noticed that this is a pain point that we have. Here are some ideas that you can bring to the table. Again, that makes you think, that makes you the problem-solving UX designer that is totally hireable.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, so I know there are quite a few upvotes for Ryan's question because everyone is talking about AI right now, right? So, so Ryan is asking to add onto Chad's question: would UX UI design positions be at risk because of AI technology getting extremely advanced, specifically creative AI tech? What are your thoughts? Of course, nobody can, just a caveat, right? So nobody can predict what will happen in the future, right? But we can, of course, speculate and guess and try to think ahead, etc.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe, who knows, right? But I love this question, Ryan. And I will say the following. At the end of the day, whatever digital product, all of the companies we named tonight, all of the companies we didn't name tonight, at the end of the day, their customers and their audience are human beings. And you need empathy. That's one of the most important, maybe problem solving and everything else that I've mentioned earlier. But you need empathy to really understand what it is that they say versus what it is that they do, because sometimes, oftentimes, those are not the same thing. So I don't think that UX positions and strategy UX positions at a risk. I think UI design positions, maybe not at a risk necessarily, but I think they will be improved by a lot of technology that's coming out. I think nowadays you can have a Figma file and then transfer it over into a Squarespace by the click of a button. So maybe you don't even need developers. And also you can have a desktop version of something and then make it a mobile version by a press of a button. But again, there will be people that need to approve everything, and there will be people that need to even push the button and design the first thing and design everything in the first place. So I don't know, are they at risk? Maybe, but time will tell. But I sincerely don't think that the research aspect, again, the networking, the communication, the sales-based actions and in the industry and in our field will ever go away, because I think it's so human.
Well, ChatGPT is saying that UX is not in the list of professions that are very likely to be automated in the near future, if you trust ChatGPT. But yeah, I would say it's hard to predict, of course, like nobody knows anything. But honestly, if here's, like I mentioned it last time, I think, based on some McKinsey research and reports I read, it's much more likely for different activities to be automated versus for entire roles to be automated, right? So yeah, some activities might be automated, and typically, not all the time, but typically those are like the more repetitive and mundane activities that a lot of designers or UX professionals would actually love to have automated, right? Something more mundane. And essentially, you're likely, at least in the like near future, right, to start working with AI more as a partner, right? So to augment your work and to help you be more productive. And I think I saw a video from Nielsen Norman also talking about this, how AI can just make UX folks just way more productive. And basically, instead of decreasing the number of roles, would just be increasing the amount of output and the amount of work that can be done, because there's a ton of work that needs to be done, right? And you could just do much, much, much more of it. So that's like a more positive take on that. All right, so Ryan is also, I think it was Ryan's question. Okay, let's take another question. I think we've taken like 50% of our questions come from Ryan. Ryan, great questions, by the way. Let's come back to this. I want to take some other folks' questions as well. So Amara is asking, do you think participating in hackathons and updating case studies from the hackathons will make a difference in overall portfolio?
Oh my gosh. Again, I think if it's a hackathon with a real life client, maybe, but I think you should use the hackathons and all of the personal projects and everything as a learning opportunity. As soon as you get real life client projects, those case studies should like slowly dwindle away from your portfolio. So focus on, I cannot stress this enough, but real life client projects, clients with constraints and not time constraints that are just limited to the hackathons. I think that's going to make you a stronger UX designer. And again, the hackathons, they don't account for how will whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you're building, impact the business line. And being in that mindset is of utmost importance.
Yeah, those are great points. I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to take a few more quick questions, but let's try to do it quickly, like 30 seconds, 1 minute. We'll try that. I know it doesn't always work when I'm answering, or sometimes when Victoria is answering, but we'll do like this lightning round of questions. And just to quickly add to that, Amara, so about hackathons, it's a great way, in my personal opinion, to practice the skills, to polish the skills, to collaborate with team, not really for your portfolio, right? What you will actually put in your portfolio, but just to practice, just to like upskill yourself, right? And then build your skills up, kind of. So not for the case studies, because case studies ideally wants to have something bigger and longer and more comprehensive, right? So that you can actually, so that looks more like a small job, essentially, right? So that's my thinking on that. And not just my thinking, but my thinking based on seeing hundreds of candidates go through this transition. So Michael is asking, when applying to jobs, do cover letters help? And if so, what type of content do hiring managers and employers, oops, this thing is moving. What kind of hiring managers, what type of content do hiring managers and employers look for in a UX UI design candidate? What did it take quickly, Victoria, on cover letters? Do you think those are important? Do you think those are helpful?
Absolutely. I think they're very important. I don't remember where I saw the stat, but you should definitely include cover letters. Again, look at Andrew's videos on YouTube because he goes into detail about how to make a really, really good one. Your resume really should do the heavy lifting, and the cover letter is almost like a nudge, nudge, hint, hint. Like, here's my resume. Why we still have cover letters, I'll never know. I think they're totally outdated. So, Michael, your question is valid, but I'm also like, I don't know who even reads them, but I think they're absolutely important. But as for the other part of your question, I think it's everything we've talked about up until now. Everything goes in your case studies, everything goes in your portfolio, everything that goes into your job search. I think that's the best way to go about it.
All right, awesome. So another question I want to take, how can I search for a mentor? So, and I know this was discussed in the chat a little bit, right? So the quick answer is ADP list is a great resource, right? You can also check out, I believe it's called Mentor Cruise. So the speaker we had, I believe last week on, Earl from Google, the ex-manager from Google. So he's on there, and there are like many other mentors as well. ADP list is free, I believe, and I've heard lots of great feedback. The only challenge with ADP list, it's not like you're gonna just get someone who's gonna regularly work with you like 2 times a week, right? So the challenge that I've heard from people is that you can get to talk to someone, but then you might have to wait to like for 2 months or 3 months to talk to them again, potentially, because there's a lot of demand, obviously, and limited supply, right? And since it's free, right? So it's that leads to that type of situation. What else do you want to take? What do you think of? So feel free to, oh, here's what I also wanted to mention. So if you feel like, if there's anyone feeling like, I really wanted to learn about something that hasn't been covered yet, right? If you have that type of question, right, we want to address this right now, right? If you feel like you really wanted to cover something, you really had a burning question, and you feel like it hasn't been covered yet, even though we try to be pretty comprehensive, put it right now in the chat or in Q&A, and we'll double check for any new questions that, and while you guys are thinking, Victoria, any other last minute tips or recommendations? Imagine you're in an elevator with someone and they have 30 seconds and you want to give your 3 biggest tips for finding their first UX job. Let's go.
Never stop learning. Read books. So outdated, but so valuable. You have no idea. Delete social media. I'll stand on that hill. That's absolutely fine. I'll fight for that fight. And reconsider job search. Don't cold apply to different companies and hope for the best, crossing your fingers, hoping for the best, but actually network. Of course, I'm going to mention it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Victoria. So let's check if we have any new questions, any new burning questions that weren't addressed yet. So I don't think I see any. So maybe we'll just take the ones we already have.
So Michelle, I know that you were asking, somebody asked this the last time we did one of these, which is if you're not a premium LinkedIn member, you can't add a message. You can. So if you request to connect with somebody, it gives you like this little thing if you want to add a note. I think those are no matter if you're on the free account or not. Oh, okay. So maybe they're limited. Then my other recommendation, if I'm still in the elevator and we're still going down or up, I'm going to say that sign up for LinkedIn Premium.
Awesome. Do you want to clarify why, Victoria, and give more detail? I think there was a question. I think someone asked, like, why?
Well, I think that, Michelle, so I don't know, maybe this is a new thing, but you can add the notes whenever you're connecting with people. And again, that's very, very valuable. I think that's also when you add a question to your message, that is a good way to get them to respond. I'm giving you guys hints to how to do this with me. And if you start a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn, Ryan, to go back to your question, which is how you find a mentor, that's a great way to make a mentor, right? So instead of just relying on an outside source, you can actually choose whatever panel you're attending, whatever event online you're attending, and find mentors that way. And then the other benefit, I think the free LinkedIn membership limits you with the amount of people you can search for. I just think it opens up your world a little bit more. And it's again, LinkedIn is the biggest source of finding everybody in a professional field. So if you pay for the premium while you're job searching, it's so beneficial.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to quickly clarify, just respond to Arjun's questions about portfolios. So Arjun was asking, for portfolio, I have mostly seen static pages and screenshots of the project. So how should one go about it? Is this the correct way to make a portfolio? So Arjun, this is definitely a big topic. So we're not going to be able to just like cover everything in 1 minute. But here's the thing. We did a whole event just on how to create an effective portfolio, right? So you can just, Mika, our assistant event organizer, can put the link and you can go on our site, virtual event recording section, and search for that. Don't even search, like there are not that many videos there. You'll be able to find how to create an effective portfolio. There may even be 2 events where we had different speakers, right? They actually go through a slide deck, and it's like a workshop, and they give you some examples. So that will give you pretty much everything you need to understand how to structure and set up your portfolio and write the case study, etc. There is also another recording with portfolio reviews that we did. We had 3 from Victoria. Were you there as well? I think you were reviewing portfolios, no?
No.
This was maybe this was a while ago. So we have an event where we had a few hiring managers review portfolios, right? And that is also in the recording section on the site. So you can find that quite useful that if you want to just see like what kind of feedback people are getting. All right. All right. So with that said, Victoria, I know we're out of time. So any last minutes tips? Imagine that elevator is still going. Anything else you want to share?
I'm lost. I'm going up and down in the elevator. I don't know. I feel like we've covered everything. We've covered a lot of different things. I don't know if there's anything more that I can say.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this was a pretty comprehensive discussion, right? So I think we have to wrap up. So Victoria, thank you so much. This was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed the events and got some great insights. So as usual, right, I wanted to mention that people ask about our program all the time, right? So as promised in the beginning, right? So let me also quickly tell you about the program that we're running, since it may be a great opportunity for some of you, right? Not just to build a very strong real client portfolio and real work experience, but also to get the crucial career prep to master UX job search and interviewing, so you can actually land that UX role. So who the program is best for? The program is the best fit for people who know UX basics or come from a design, research, creative tech, or related background and look to transition into UX in one of the most effective and efficient ways without quitting their current jobs or other commitments. We're also pretty selective and look for motivated and committed team players. So what's BeginX? It's a part-time UX career accelerator program with real mission-driven client projects designed to help people transition into UX. We ran many cohorts and helped about 150 people transition into UX. Alumni of the program had been hired by companies like SiriusXM, Coach, Google, ABC News, Meta, JP Morgan, Publicis Sapient, many, many others. So the program was also ranked by SwitchUp as a best UX program, and as well as ADP List wrote an article as well, and featured in Fortune magazine. The advisors and mentors are also UX practitioners from companies like Google, IDEO, Amex, The Economist, many others. So what you gain after completing the program is You build not just hard skills, but the critical softer skills, real experience with a robust portfolio, expand your professional network, and master UX job search and interviewing so you can actually land a UX role. And in fact, because our grads have done so well, we offer money-back guarantee. So you either land a UX role or you get your tuition back plus an extra $300 on top of that. So if it sounds like you may be a good candidate, you can learn more at beginx.com. You'll see a link in the chat. The next cohort start date is actually quite soon, next week, October 25th. And our cohorts are quite small and do fill up quickly, so it's only limited to 12 people. So please act soon. Also to thank everyone in our community who attended this event. You'll be eligible for a $600 tuition credit if accepted. To claim that credit, what you need to do is by this Thursday, tomorrow, go to the website. You'll see the link in the chat again and request a free, no commitment career transition consultation, or just request program info or just apply. And by the way, the consultations are designed to not just be some quick program pitch, right? So they actually provide you an opportunity to learn about UX career transition best practices and pitfalls to avoid, get personalized advice and guidance, ask questions about your own career switch and how the program can actually help you, and see if you may be a good fit for the program. All right, so that's a little bit about the program. I know for some of you at that particular stage, it can be a great opportunity. In addition to telling you about the program, I also wanted to mention that we frequently run different types of virtual events. So we will we'll keep you updated about the upcoming events and share resources via our newsletter that is usually sent every few weeks or so. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you to our wonderful guest speaker for taking her time to join us and provide all the valuable insights. It was a huge pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Michael, for inviting me back. And thank you so much for everyone that stuck around until the very end. Last thing I will say, I feel like Columbo. Have you guys remember like Columbo? Am I dating myself? Okay. The last thing I'll say is, I think job search, I think UX field, and really anything in life, you get out of it what you put in. So even with beginnings, you really truly get out of it what you put in. The General Assembly, job search, it's all the same. Energy and time, or focus and time. And that is all. I wish you all the best. Again, connect with me if you guys have further questions or want to chat with me or anything. And thank you again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Victoria. I really appreciate you. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
All right.
We'll see you at the next event.
Bye. Good night.